Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Fantasy Fiends podcast. I'm your host and member of the USSR, Stevie Collier, and I'm here with Andy Peliquin. And today we are honored to have Angela on the podcast today, and we have a really, really cool subject today. And it's, despite what I'm wearing, it is an actual serious subject. And so, yeah, Andy.
Stop you from talking. Welcome,
Yeah,
Angela,
exactly.
for your second time on the Fantasy Fiends podcast.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Really happy to be back.
That's awesome. For those of you who were listening on iTunes or Podbean, Stevie was wearing a USSR style general's hat and the world's most ridiculous
Yep.
oversized glasses.
I feel like that was very culturally insensitive what I did there.
I don't know who to, but probably.
Yeah, maybe. It's there are some pluses to have a brother who's dating a Russian, so
There you go.
yeah, I make it work. Yes,
All
so
right.
welcome, Angela.
This week's episode of the Fantasy Fiends podcast is brought to you by Age of War by Michael J. Sullivan. The alliance of humans and renegade Frey is fragile and about to be tested as never before. Persephone keeps the human clans from turning on one another through her iron will and a compassionate heart. The arrogant Frey are barely held in check by their leader, Nephron, who seeks to advance his own nefarious agenda through a loveless marriage that will result in the betrayal of the person Persephone loves most, Wraith, the god killer. As the Frey overlords marshal their army and sorcerers to crush the rebellion, old loyalties will be challenged while fresh conspiracies will threaten to undo all that Persephone has accomplished. In the darkest hour, when hope is all but lost, new heroes will rise, but at what terrible cost? Ooh. Magic, fantasy, and mythology collide in Michael J. Sullivan's Legends of the First Empire series. Pick up your copy on Amazon today and find out more about the author at ryira.blogspot.com. That's RIYRIA.blogspot.com. The epic battle between humankinds and their godlike rulers finally ignites.
Love it.
It is such an awesome book. I've been a Michael J. Sullivan fan for a couple of years now, thanks to a friend of mine. Angela, have you read any of his stuff?
Not yet. It's on my list, my very long reading list, but I'm looking forward to it. After that, how could I not read it?
The Ryira Chronicles or Ryira Revelations, the Ryira series, it's about a swordsman and an assassin, sort of like the best buddy cop series ever, except because they're like the one guy is super upbeat, super optimistic, and the other guy is just cynical and world worn, and so everything about them is awesome. But this new series is set like 2,000 or 3,000 years before the Ryira Chronicles, and so all of the religions that were established in the books, the other series, this is where they first show up, or all of so it's like a prequel, but it's really, really well done. I'm listening to Age of War right now, the third book on audio, and I'm loving it.
Wait, is this the guy who has like the two brothers, the book on the two brothers? And it's like supposed to be kind of comical. I'm so confused. And he's never been on the podcast though, right?
No, Michael J. Sullivan is probably the best known indie fantasy author.
Really? I thought that would be Michael Scott Earl.
Michael Scott Earl is probably one of the best selling, one of the most prolific, but Michael J. Sullivan is actually one of the original authors to succeed as an indie publisher. In fact, he released all 6 books, I believe, of his Ryira series, and then I believe Orbit picked it up. So he was doing super well for himself, and then Orbit picked it up, and now I think he publishes a lot of his stuff through them. But then he also self-publishes his own things via Kickstarter. His last Kickstarter got funded crazy fast.
Wow, geez, Andy, you know so much.
Well, I'm a huge fan of this person.
Oh, okay. And you know what bothers me is like anytime I see the name Sullivan, I can't help but think of Monsters Inc.
Because of Sully.
Yeah, Sully. Hey, Sully. All right, I'll be quiet.
And that was Stevie's tangent number 1.
Yeah, woo! Number 1. Are there more coming?
I know, probably. All right, so as usual, Stevie likes to waste our time by talking about awesome things that happened to us.
Monsters Inc. Yes, what? Waste our time, whatever.
So, Angela, why don't you tell us something awesome that happened to you this week?
Woo, this week. I read a book.
Ooh, that for people who aren't authors, it's like, what? It's such a small thing, but for authors, it's a huge deal.
It is a huge deal. Like finding the time is so rough. So that is my win for the week.
Total
Just
win.
getting to immerse myself in a different world. Love it.
Which book was it?
I read, well, actually I've started reading a couple. But I'm reading Plains of Salt and Steel, which is an epic fantasy.
Sean Hin or Alicia?
No. Alicia. Yep.
How do you pronounce her last name?
I'm not sure, which is really embarrassing because we like actually hang out all the time. So
It's in person.
yes.
Oh wow, yeah. I do not know how to pronounce her last name, so I'm not even gonna try to butcher it.
Yep. So that's my also embarrassing fact for the week. So there we go.
Very cool, Stevie. What awesome thing happened to you this week?
I'm gonna say, awesome can go either way. It can be negative or positive. Am I right?
No.
It can, like, it was an awesome explosion. You never heard that? Like, I feel like I've heard that before.
Awesome cannot be negative.
Are you sure? Well, and I thought like awesome, like as in it's just this big thing,
Yes.
Okay, but
it's
it can't
never
be
a negative
negative.
thing.
Okay, good thing because I wanted to put that in what I was writing today. I was like, no, it just doesn't seem right, and I think that would trip people up. But anyway, I got poison ivy. So yeah. Long story short, I got poison ivy.
Did you get it from peeing in the wrong bush?
A couple different bushes. No, I walked my dog down being Texas, where everything is just it's woods everywhere, right? And you can't just. I'm in like in a town, and it's just got woods everywhere. So just walking him now, I have to be super careful because why are we talking about my poison ivy?
I have no idea.
But it's itchy and it sucks.
Yes, I'm sure it does. Something awesome that happened to me this week, well, since the last episode, was I finished Dark Blade Justice and came up with that title.
Nice. Dang, that was
It,
quick.
I know. It was like I didn't know what to call it, so eventually I just settled on adding it to the Dark Blade series, and it's basically the murder mystery crossover between the Night Guild characters and the Hunter, which it's by fan request. I had to write it, and of course I love those characters so much, so I had to bring them back, and it'll ultimately lead into the Heirs of Destiny series that I'll write. But I finished 98,000 words in just over 2 weeks. That for me is a record.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing.
How
Applause.
the heck did you do that?
I put in three. I worked Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and I was writing about 7 or 8 hours a day, so 16,000 words each of those 3 days for 2 weeks.
My God. You're a beast. You're a machine. And they're good words, I'm guessing.
Well,
Coming from Andy.
adequate at least.
They're Andy words, so they must be good.
I guess we'll find out.
I actually suffered. I don't know if I believe in writer's block, but sometimes I just get stuck, I would say. And today was one of those stuck days. But man, after 10 minutes of just, you just break through it. You just cause some shit to happen. And then boom, you're back in the groove, man. 4,000 words just vomited out of me,
Nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's something cool that happened to me. Yeah, so I think we ready to get to the topic.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm so freaking awkward. That's why I can't meet people in real life.
And we're back on Stevie's dating life. That took exactly 9 minutes.
No, I'm awkward with the same sex too. Don't worry, I can't meet anybody. Like you want to go to conventions with me, and I feel bad for you.
Don't worry, I'll show you how much fun it can be. All you need is a little bit of coffee and not enough sleep, and it's just magic.
And just a line of cocaine, we're good.
That's one thing I haven't tried at a con.
At a con. That's one thing. There's so much other stuff. Okay, so today we are talking about what makes a fantasy character lovable and what makes them detestable. Joffrey.
Yeah, definitely. Like one thing that I've heard a lot of fantasy authors talking about is you can't really have middle of the line characters. I think that's probably something common in all books. Your characters, you've either got to root for them or you've got to kind of hate them. You can't have anybody who's just like, whatever. because then their characters don't really serve any purpose. So either they're protagonists, or on the protagonist side, they help the main characters, or they're on the antagonist side. So let's start with the protagonist. What are some things that you do to immediately connect readers with your characters?
Ooh, that's a fun one. I think there are 4 different things really that connect the characters to the readers. And one of the things, or the first one, I like to go back to their personality and kind of their flaws. So I think it's really important that a character isn't perfect, because, I mean, that kind of makes them unlikable, which I'm drifting down that hole. But I think it's really important that they have personality. So whether they're really spunky or they're more like cautious about things, and then they have a big desire, they have a big goal, whatever that is. And it doesn't necessarily have to be revealed to the reader right away. But I think as long as there's that striving for something or to keep something, then that's really important to have.
I like that. I like personality. I don't make all of my characters super strong personalities, but sometimes the characters just kind of write themselves with these fiery personalities. That was one thing that happened with my thief girl Alana. It was just this naturally badass character because of the story, because of her circumstances, but just so biting and sarcastic. Some of the most fun I've had writing her was the scenes where she was barking at, the guy who hates her, and I still was able to bring that in. It's been 10 years since the series ended, but even in her later stories, she still has that dynamic with this guy where they're just snapping at each other. It's so much fun. So it's really fun to make like weird or quirky personalities.
Oh yeah, the quirky personalities are so much fun. I like to create I guess, like, I have a character, he's a charmer, and I love his personality because he's very charming wherever he goes, but then he's also very selfish and self-centered, and it's an interesting dynamic. People either love him or they hate him. It's not the middle of the road. They're like, oh wow, I love that character because he's so crazy, or it's like, I absolutely hate him because he's just so cocky and self-assured and he's got it going for him.
That is one kind of character that I have not tried to write, a charmer. It would be an interesting experiment.
Yeah, you should do it. Challenge.
For me, and the question was when you're starting out with the character, the protagonist, like
Or
to get
things that you do throughout the book, even.
so there is something I do at the very beginning of the book, and it's something popular with a lot of authors, and a lot of authors don't like it apparently, and that is saving the cat. So you'll notice in all of my books, I will try and get you sentimentally attached to the character by making him do something heroic, and it doesn't have to be something huge, and it can be something he fails at, but as long as he attempts it, or at least, and I've actually had him half-ass attempt stuff to save the cat, and by save the cat, it's it could be anything from, I would say, even getting the milk for your mom so she didn't have to go to the store, or saving somebody who's falling off a cliff. I do stuff like that at the beginning, and throughout the book, I think a major part of people getting connected to a character is his flaw, because it shows that he's a real person and they can sometimes relate to that character. I always try and make my characters relatable, and I think what makes my novels unique is I not afraid to bring up thoughts in the characters' minds that people nowadays have.
When you say relatable, what does that mean? Put some blending here on that.
So I actually asked the same question because I listened to a lot of audiobooks on craft, and they're always like, well, make him relatable. I'm like, okay, well, how do I do that? And for me, it's strong. So when I read a book, I want to pretend that I'm that character. And if the character is too far from how I would act as a person, I won't read it. So for example, Andy's hunter, the hunter of Ramis, the legendary hunter of Ramis, when I got connected to the hunter when we saw him helping people in the alleyway. That's when I said I can relate to this guy because I would do the same thing. Another way I got connected to the hunter is when he was getting sexually aroused by that hot chick. I would have done the same thing, and I would have went along with it too. I related to that character. I do the same thing. Today I wrote a scene where it's a 15-year-old boy, and he sees 2 nude women that the king sends to him to pleasure him. Well, he's shy, he's embarrassed, he doesn't want to do anything with them. So, and they're like, oh, well, the king's going to beat us if you don't do anything. Well, he said, well, just come sit in the bathtub and talk to me. And I found that relatable because he's quirky, he's weird, and I think the audience will like this character because he's not just all over it. Because does that make sense at all?
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
I was telling Andy before the podcast is I feel like I do this naturally. I feel like a lot of authors do this naturally without even thinking about it. They probably don't even write it in their outlines. Maybe some do.
Oh, well, I'm a pantser, so I don't outline.
Yes. I'm trying to outline now, but it's hard for me to do it. It's really difficult.
You just have to be awesome. That's all it takes.
That's true. Yeah, no, it's an easy feat to do, to be awesome.
Absolutely.
Did what I said make sense?
The one thing that a lot of readers will automatically connect to is kindness to animals and children. For some reason, animals are more important almost than children.
Yes, they are. And it's funny that you say that, because I actually, and no one hate me for saying this, I don't really like animals at all. I just don't. I'm not that person. I do like kids though. I'll do that. But in all my books, I always make sure that at least one character has a pet, because that's really important. I don't know why people just connect to that and they love that, and they just. So I like that idea of having the pets, or like having something to care for that shows like a different side of their personality. I think that's really important.
I love how both of these things are in the novel I'm writing now. In fact, the first 20 pages, the main character attempts to save a child. And then he gets a pet halfway through the book. So totally agree with that one. It definitely makes you more attached to the protagonist. Andy, would you say it's soul hunger, right?
The dagger.
Yeah, would you say that would be a pet?
No.
No, you wouldn't? Okay.
Pets are harder for me, because I don't have pets. I have children. So I don't know much about that bond that someone forms with a pet. For my Silent Champions series, I did write a pet in, because I'm targeting mythology, and this character is a mythological creature, and it serves as a messenger service for the secret, the special ops team and stuff like that. So having the pet bond with the main character was super important. So I did try to do it, but I don't know, if I've done it right or not, because I don't have pets. So I don't know what it's like, to want to have a massive 50-pound dog jump on your lap and snuggle, something like that. It's not me, so that's something that I've never written into my books. Oh, I wrote one pet into Thief of the Night Guild, but it wasn't the main character's pet. It was this sort of crazy cat lady, but instead of a cat, she had this lemur kind of monkey. And it was one of the most fun scenes in the whole book, because this monkey goes around destroying things in her room, and she's a chemist or an alchemist. So it's like causing massive explosions and sparks and stuff. And she's yelling at it and chasing it around the room. And the main character standing outside the door, like, what the hell is going on? It was just a really fun scene to write.
Does anyone else have trouble like remembering the pet is there? Because sometimes I forget, like the main character has a pet, and like I forget it's there, so I have to go back and write it back into the scene.
Yep, I had to do that with the Silent Champions.
Really?
Yeah.
You're like, crap, totally forgot about it.
I know I did that in a book, and like part of me wanted to kill off the pet so that I wouldn't have to keep up with it, but it was really important.
Yeah, you can't do that. You can't
kill
off pets.
It's kind of like Dungeons and Dragons, where you got to remember your inventory kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's why I'll never write another lit RPG, because I had to keep up with the damn inventory. It was like work. I had a spreadsheet,
Yeah.
It was crazy. So Andy, what else makes a character positive?
One thing that a lot of people really identify with is sort of a tragic backstory in a way. That's one thing that a lot of authors do to immediately bond the readers to their character, because everybody has crap in their life and their history. They've got people that have treated them bad. They've got things that they don't like about their past, and so we're all sort of used to dealing with that. So when you read about someone else who's got some baggage of their own, you're like, all right, I'm not so weird. I'm not so unique with my baggage. This guy, sure, his his whole family was slaughtered. I may have lost my job. It's a little bit different, but
Yeah.
at least that sense of loss, that sense of isolation, things like that come from backstories. Those are things that a lot of people can identify with.
Yeah, and I was watching a TV show kind of answering the question, what makes us human? And it was the suffering was really important part of that. And suffering is something, we can always remember. And then something else that stood out was memories, the memories we have. So I like to always do like flashbacks or have like an item or something that reminds them of a time that was either, it could be a good time or a bad time. But I think that really helps to connect because these people have memories, and that's something that we all have. And so
Yeah.
there are different places that we go to, different locations that might call up some memories. Either we
Yeah.
were there with certain people, or we were doing something, or it was like the happiest day of our lives, or it recalls some tragic events. I think
like
that's really
a
important.
like a keepsake, even
Oh yeah, yeah.
some little thing. That's one thing that I wrote into subconsciously to the Night Guild series, was the sling that her sort of love interest taught her to use. She wore it as a bracelet, and anytime she was sentimental, she looked at it, and it was just something that I did subconsciously. And then as I was writing the third book, I was like, okay, this is why I did it. And it's interesting that you bring that up.
For the backstory, does it have to be like some crazy tragic backstory? Can it be like a simple, like for Finn, my main character, I made it a realistic tragedy, not like my parents were killed in a fire. I mean, that's realistic, but it's like one of his parents died and the other one got wounded trying to save her. Well, I guess that's kind of crazy too. But I'm one.
It doesn't even have to be traumatic or negative. It can be happy memories. You can have people who have happy backstories.
What?
I haven't yet managed to write any characters with
Me
happy
neither.
backstories, but it does exist. I guess it's for the people who write the more epic and heroic types of fantasy, as opposed to us dark and grim dark writers. But yeah, you can make people who have normal happy homes, and then their parents are supportive when they go off on their quest to save the world, and then there's some other thing that drives them. Like, I think there's a lot of stories where the character sort of leaves home, leaves his family behind to go off, and it's not like his family's farm was burned and everyone killed. It's just there's this mission that you have to go deal with. I think a lot of people are sort of stuck to the idea that you have to have this traumatic backstory experience as a catalyst, and obviously that makes for much more dramatic reading, but it's not always necessary.
Kings of the
Absolutely.
Wild.
Yeah, I'm writing two characters right now. One has a tragic background. The other, he has a pretty happy, low-key background. As a matter of fact, he liked it, but he got bored, so he left. So, I mean, it will escalate at some point, but it's a good background. It's happy memories, and I like going back to those memories because they were happy memories, and it's something when he's in going through trials and tribulations that he goes back to that moment. He's like, oh yeah, like I remember these good times. So I like having that.
With that, do the characters, since one has a bad background, one has a happy background, do they like get into arguments then? Like, you don't understand what I've been through kind of thing?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yes.
I
That's
like
good.
to have that little clash right there. It's fun.
Hmm. By the way, I wanted to say, Angela, I love you got a new cover for the Five Warriors,
I did.
and
Oh
it is
yeah.
amazing.
Thank you.
It looks really, really good. In fact, you should probably print this out and put it on your wall or something. So it looks really cool.
I love it. It's so much better than the other one. I just
did you
really
re
like it.
did you re-release it?
I did not re-release it. I just I sent it for re-edit and did the new cover and then just uploaded it.
Nice.
So if anyone's paying attention, they'll get the new stuff, but nothing too dramatic.
Cool. Andy, you want to talk about villains?
Yeah, well, not even villains, just things that automatically make
Oh,
people
yeah.
antagonistic. It's
Mhm.
pretty easy to make it clear. One more for the protagonist side.
Okay.
One super simple way to make readers like a character is have the characters like the character. You have the guy say, he's someone you can trust. Automatically, you trust him. He's one of my brothers in arms. Brothers gives that emotional connection. So just by having your characters like a character, sort of like how in Hero of Darkness, the little flower girl bonds with the hunter. She likes him. So all of a sudden, you like him. It's a subconscious thing or an unconscious thing. But when you see that someone else likes someone, you are more prone to liking that person as well.
Is the opposite true? Like, what if you can tell the guy's a good guy, but then like some jerk is like talking smack to him, you know? Like, will that make you like the protagonist as well?
You mean an antagonist?
Oh, I mean, antagonist. Yeah, I guess you could say that, but like a bully making fun of him, you know, they.
You see, it's all about how you set that up. If you make it clear that it's a bully talking smack about the protagonist, that antagonism, because you're automatically supposed to hate bullies, so because it's sort of like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. There's that
That's what I'm
subconscious
saying.
thing.
Okay, yeah.
So you can, uh, you've got the antagonist saying, "Oh, the guy's such a bastard," and you're kind of like, "Yes," because they're getting, the protagonist, the guy that you're supposed to like, is pissing off the guy that you hate. It's the sort of Schadenfreude that we all have.
I feel like George R. Martin does like a roller coaster with these feelings. Like you like the character, you don't like the character, you like the character, you don't like the character, kind of thing. At least that's what I got out of it when I read the first book and watching the TV show. Like that one prince who has sex with his sister.
Oh yeah, him.
Jeremy.
You hate him and then you kind of like him, I guess, and then you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's very back and forth, and it's very interesting because I felt like the liking the character, not liking the character in Game of Thrones, like, and that happened with a lot of different characters to me. I felt like you were allowed to see their flaws, but then you were also allowed to see their growth, where they messed up in areas, but then you could see where, oh, actually they are trying to do something good. Um, but in the end, well, I don't know what happened in the end, so I digress.
Yeah, I don't know either.
People died.
Yeah, I bet. That show's so stressful.
I watch it for the dragons. I watched the end of season 7. Is that the one that's out? But yeah, just to see the dragons go. That it was
I
great.
think I've only seen
Totally
season
worth it.
2.
All right, so now on to antagonists. What automatically makes you hate someone? A character, obviously.
Oh, I think one of the things, if they're just evil for no reason, they're just evil just to be evil, or they're like violent or overly cruel. Those are really things that really get me in books.
Just like a person just grew up, just messed up, like a
Yeah,
psychopath.
they're just yes, and they're just violent for no reason, like Prince Joffrey in Game of
Yeah.
Thrones. Like he just for no reason, he was just overly cruel.
Yeah.
Would that be like a side effect of him being born from siblings? You know, like he has some brain issue or something. That's what I always thought. You know, like he has some brain problem that made him that way. I don't know.
Possible.
I'm no psychologist.
Inbreeding can have detrimental effects on human development.
I'm
Possible.
I'm setting up a character like Angela said for book 2 in the Bizarre Blade series. He's going to be someone who's just evil and set in his ways. Like he thinks all magical creatures should be killed. This is how he is, and he's evil and he's cruel to them. So yeah, I definitely agree that just being that way makes you an antagonist. Um, One for me is sexual abuse. I always, no matter what you do, if you do sexual abuse or something abusive sexually to someone else, I hate that character. And there's no going back for me. You can't win my love again. Um, I know that's a weird
Yeah.
thing, but I've read characters where they sexually abuse someone else, and I'm just like, all right, I hope you die. I hope you go to hell. Like, that to me makes a really, really nasty character.
Because that's something that we've sort of been trained and it's instilled in our brain that is wrong. And it is. So it's something that obviously you would automatically hate.
What about you, Andy?
Um, yeah, wanton cruelty is one. Pettiness. People who get angry and snap back for no reason. Like in the scene that I wrote today, these soldiers swagger into a bar. Everyone's terrified of them. It's very Nazi Germany style vibe in this fantasy kingdom. And the bartender's shaking so much that he spills some beer onto the guy's silver armor, and the guy loses his shit over it. because he's just a petty person. He can get angry. He enjoys inflicting, he enjoys making other people afraid because he's a bully. And so it's sort of, you've got, the blend between a petty person who just takes offense at everything and then a bully. So
That's a really, for some reason that brought up the idea of the antagonist and Black Panther, not Michael Jordan's son, the white guy with the missing arm.
yeah,
Would you
Ulysses
count him
Claw.
as? Would you name him? Would you call him petty, or what? What would? Why is he an antagonist? I can't really figure it out. He's just like kind of insane
Who?
and greedy.
The Ulysses Claw.
Yeah, is he just like greedy? Is that why we don't like him?
You don't like him because he's breaking the laws, and we're all ingrained to obey the law. So by being a lawbreaker, he is contravening the established order, which is, in this case, order is what the main character is trying to encourage as the king. Now, if the main character was the thief, the king would be the bad guy. So it's all about the perspective on this story. But we hate him because he's endangering the kingdom that the character that we have identified with is trying to protect. So automatically that's setting us against him. You also hate him because, like you said, he's greedy, he's cowardly. You kind of don't hate him because he's kind of a funny, sort of a humorous villain in a way.
Yeah, he is.
When they, spoiler alert, kill him, I was actually kind of sad because Andy Serkis is awesome, and I was hoping for some more Andy Serkis.
I know they just killed him, but yeah, he wasn't. He was more frustrating, and you almost felt like if you could reform him, he could be a good character.
Yeah,
but he just was too far down his path.
maybe if he had a kid,
Or a
slowed him
pet.
down, or a pet. Yeah, we're back to the pets. And I like that scene where he goes, "I made it rain. I just made it rain." And then they're like shoving him into the car, like, "Stop, go, go, go. We need to go." And he's just like sauntering out of the place he just blew up. So to me, he was a very memorable antagonist. Andy, can we have more than one antagonist in a book?
You can have many antagonists. In fact, every single person who stands in the way of the main character getting what he wants is an antagonist.
Would we call the main antagonist the villain?
No.
No?
Villain is a specific sort of breed of antagonist in that they are more stereotypically evil. An antagonist is someone who opposes. So let's say your character wants to pull out money from his ATM. The bank declines. The manager is unhelpful. The manager isn't evil. He's not a villain, but because he's not helping, he's an antagonist.
Interesting.
That's sort of the subject of one of the massive blog post series on my blog, is the difference between a villain and an antagonist and the various types. An antagonist can be every single type of person. The hero can be the antagonist depending on the perspective. Name your favorite hero in TV, movies, books.
Oh, name him now?
Yeah.
Man, you kind of put me on the spot here. Okay, oh my gosh, in Ready Player One, the Sixers.
I have not seen that one. Let's go a little bit more mainstream.
What? Mainstream? That is mainstream. You didn't see the movie?
I haven't seen it either. It's on my to-do list. It was just
so good.
I read the book though.
So good. Okay, Harry Potter, Malfoy.
There you go. Harry Potter. No, Malfoy is the bad guy.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Harry Potter is the good guy. Take it from the perspective of the teachers. Harry Potter is a disruptive little shit because he's skipping classes, all of that. So now, obviously, you hate Dolores Umbridge because she is that petty bureaucrat. But think of McGonagall. All McGonagall's trying to do is keep her class in order. She's trying to help her house win. And Harry is just giving her a hard time.
Yep.
Any superhero, any hero, anyone can be the bad guy. Jesus Christ, to Pontius Pilate, he was causing disruption. Mm-hmm. All you have to do is shift the perspective, and the hero can be the antagonist, and the antagonist can be the hero. And so that's what, as authors, we do. We put the reader in a specific perspective and bring them on this journey. My character is an assassin. He should definitely be an antagonist. He's a half demon. He should definitely be. He's kind of insane. He definitely should be a bad guy. But because of the perspective, the way it's written, the people he goes up against, he's the character that you want to root for. So no matter who you have, you can make anyone a hero, and you can make anyone, you can make anyone an antagonist or a protagonist. It's all about perspective.
See, I really love that you broke it down like that, because it just means that the characters feel very real and they feel very relatable, because depending on perspective, you could love them or hate them. And they actually have their memories and their backstory, and they're deep enough so that you understand their motives. And I think understanding motives is really important. And that also helps us relate to characters and kind of pick sides, because we understand what their goals are, what their motives are, and where they want to get to. And so we can choose to root or not root for them.
Exactly. And that's, as a writer, as writers, it's our job to frame the characters that we're following in that light. Whether if you're writing grimdark, like we talked about with Matthew Johnson last week, everyone's a shade of gray. But for pretty much every other type of fiction, not just fantasy, every fiction, you've got characters that could be good, could be bad, depending on the perspective. Read any romance novel, and okay, take the classic romance novel, The Notebook. The antagonist, as it were, is the father who wants to keep his daughter from falling in love with the poor builder guy. Yeah. The fiance, who is nothing but a good guy to her the entire movie until she leaves him. She cheats on him and leaves him. They are the antagonists because the John Green, or whoever wrote it, made us want her to end up with Ryan Gosling. So it's all the perspective, and all your job all our jobs as writers to do is take this character, whatever kind of character, the more challenging, the more fun in many ways, and frame them in a light that people can say, okay, I understand why you made that decision. Now, that's one thing that I've found through my writing is I actually go through the logical and emotional journey that the character goes through to explain why they would choose to do something. In Darkblade Savior, the hunter is given a choice to save the world or save one person. Total obvious choice, right? Save the world. Mm-hmm. But is it? When, it's that, like we talked about that train, 5 versus 1 scenario. If it's the person you hate on the one track, kill him. If it's the person you love most in the world, a little bit harder. So it's all about that. You throw your characters into a situation, you paint them in this light through the things that connect you to them, or the antagonists that make you automatically dislike them, and then you take them on this journey that gets the readers either to love or hate them. It's all about perspective.
You are the antagonist villain master.
Well said.
Yeah.
It's definitely one of my favorite things, is just writing these different types of antagonists and villains, and then finding ways to make your typical hero the antagonist and your typical villain the protagonist. Like the character of the hunter, half of the people who oppose him are priests, and priests are supposed to be the good guys. I found that I have a very cynical view of priests in my world, unfortunately.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But because priests are supposed to be these good, or our conception of them is that they're supposed to be good. They're supposed to be following, the religion. Religion is supposed to make people better. So when the priest, this religious figurehead that's supposed to be good, turns out not to be good, that's even more of a disappointment than when you see the soldier or the mercenary. The mercenary, you assume, yeah, he's killing for money, so he's probably just loyal to himself. If he's a bastard, yeah, pretty par for the course. Now the paladin, when the paladin turns evil, shit gets real. You know that something big happens. Same with the priest. When the priest is flawed, or when he's human, or when he's weak, or when he's even terrible, it's a much deeper betrayal, because you've held them to this subconscious or unconscious standard of being better than everybody else.
Oh, I love that deep betrayal when that happens in books. It's quite interesting. One of my favorites is Legend of Eli Monpress. I don't know if you've read that, but it's by Rachel Aaron. It's really good. It's about a thief, And so he goes around disrupting the order of the world. And it's just very interesting what his motives are. And at first it seems something that's really shallow, but then he has an opportunity to actually make a difference and save the world. And he's kind of torn between his selfishness and, doing something for the greater good. That was something fascinating. Really enjoyed that one.
And what was it called again?
The Legend of Eli Monpress.
Legend of Eli. And Andy, you're talking about the priests. That reminded me of Scott Lynch. Priests have a pretty big. They're pretty negative in that book as well, right?
Yeah. I feel I was like, my stories were influenced strongly by Scott Lynch, but I think I kind of ran with it a little bit more than he did.
Nice.
Yeah, the whole blood transfusion thing was pretty funny. Not funny, but serious, but funny now looking back, talking about this in your portrayal of priests.
That was a really interesting thing for me to think of. It was like, why would a priest go out and commit a sin? And so that was the perspective that I wanted to explain through the story. And it was a really interesting thing for me to create, to say, all right, these priests, they're supposed to be good, but right now they're going to go out and they're going to commit a sin. Why would they do that? And it was just this strange thing. And so I like doing that. I like putting myself, sort of writing myself into these situations where I have to think of a way for the character, to get the reader to follow along this perspective, so that they identify. Like in Darkblade Seeker, the 4th book of the Hero of Darkness series, the hunter finds these 2 demons, and he knows he's coming to kill these demons, and yet he doesn't right away. Why not? Why do these 2 demons survive all the way to the end of the book? What are the steps that lead him to say, okay, this demon's worse than that one, so I'm going to work with him against that one, or no, I'm going to do this now because it's going to help me. It's such an interesting dynamic, and it's something that we have to do with every new book we write. We put our characters in these situations, we throw them up against obstacles, and we kind of have to walk them through them, and in doing so, we walk ourselves through those same emotional and intellectual journeys.
I want to say something, then I want to ask Angela a question. I have this antagonist, might be a villain, probably a villain after hearing what you explained, but you don't meet this person not until the very end of the book. So I'm just building this guy up and up and up, and I think it's going to be like this big, it's going to be a person, but it's going to be this big scary monster by the end of the book. That's all you've heard about, and then it's going to be this big fight scene between these two. Andy, what do you think about that?
I think it's a great option, because you've got these characters that the whole series you've been told that you need to hate him. And so, like I said, you can automatically make a reader hate someone by saying, I hate him, by making the protagonist hate him. So if your protagonist, your hero, is afraid of this character, the reader is going to be as well.
And then by the end of it, you realize, oh my God, this guy was bad, but there's someone even worse than him. Kind of like the guy who has Voldemort behind his head, whatever his name is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it starts with a Q, I thought.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Okay. My question for Angela is, do you want to talk about an antagonist in your book, The 5 Warriors? Is it The 5 Warriors? Am I right?
Yeah, that's one of them. Uh-huh.
Or any book, really, that an antagonist that you've created.
Well,
Are there a lot of them?
Well, yes and no. My favorite one, I mean, he's an antagonist, yes, but he's also the villain. He's just like one of my favorite characters, which is terrible, but I really got to know him just like creating his backstory. And during the first 2 books in the series, he was very lightly sketched, because the perspective that I wanted everyone to see was that he's this big, terrible, very evil guy, and he does all these very evil things, and we all hate him. And then in the last 2 books, through a series of flashbacks, I kind of showed the reader more about him and his life and his motives and his goals. And it kind of made people start to like him a little bit, even though he was still doing all of his violent, evil actions. You kind of understood him a lot more because he had his goals. And so his whole ideal of like world domination, you really understood it. by the time you got to the end, because you were like, oh, okay, I get it. Like, he's this immortal that's been accidentally placed in this world, and he wants to either make it better or get out and find a different place for himself, a place where he really belongs. And he's faced all this opposition, and really he just wants to belong somewhere, and he wants help to get to where he wants to get to. So
Getting attached to an antagonist, that's interesting.
yeah, I've had quite a few fans write me and tell me that they really like that character. I'm like, oh, that's great. You're supposed to hate him, but it was just
Yeah,
really
right.
fun, kind of like exploring that whole side of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, of course, he was still like evil, but the part was you understood a little bit more where he's coming from and why he's doing this. Doesn't make it right, but you understand.
Well, I kind of want to jump into the story now that we have from you today. What do you think, Andy?
I'm in.
And Angela, do you want to tell us what we'll be reading from today?
Yeah, so this is a little short story that's leading into my next upcoming series. This is the name of the story. It's a free short story, I think, on my website, but it's called Citrine's Monsters. And it is about, I guess technically she would be called a witch, but this is about her banishment, or the beginning of her banishment from the place where she currently lives. So this is the opening chapter, and it's kind of one of those conflicting scenes where you aren't really sure. I think you'll be on her side by the end of it, but I'll let y'all see.
Cool. And it's the one Coral Citrine's Monsters Chapter 1, right?
That's it.
Okay, cool. All right. And there are characters who speak in this.
Yes,
Yep.
there's Hansel.
Yep.
Hansel.
And then the main, I'm assuming, female character.
Yes.
All right, why don't you read the female? I'll read Hansel. Stevie, you can narrate.
Okay. Are you guys ready?
Yeah.
Yes.
Ah. The foul wind slammed the door behind me. The hinges growled as if they would suddenly develop fingers, reach out and eat me alive. Shaking off the looming sixth sense something bad was about to transpire, I spun around and drew up short, nearly dropping my basket of goods.
Hansel.
Reaching up, I struggled with the knot of the scarf that concealed my vibrant hair.
You gave me a fright.
They warned me about you.
My lover Hansel confronted me as if some outwardly being had invaded his body and held it hostage. His bare arms trembled, and his chocolate brown eyes were red-rimmed.
They warned me about you.
His tone hollow as he repeated words buzzed in the suddenly thick air.
What are you talking about?
I waved my hand in dismissal, more frustrated with the stubborn knot than what Hansel was agitated about.
I was in the garden.
He went on. A sudden flurry of alarm flitted through my heart like the panicked wings of a butterfly stuck in a spiderweb.
Save me.
Words whispered through my mind.
Save me.
Blinking, I straightened my shoulders, dropping the basket and hugging my middle.
I told you never to go into the garden.
I lifted my chin, reminding myself to stay calm and confident.
He knows nothing. We can figure this out as long as I don't lose my temper.
I know.
His words bit the air as he snapped at me, a wave of anger passing over his face like a flash of lightning.
I found this.
In his right hand, he held up a 3-foot-long black and white patterned snakeskin.
What kind of dark creature has a skin like this? And this?
He held up a peacock blue feather, twice the size of my hand.
What do a snakeskin and a feather have to do with anything?
I cooed, taking a step towards him, holding up my hands in reassurance.
Don't you think you're overreacting? We live on the outskirts of the boundary line forest. Wild beasts roam the meadows from time to time, which is why I told you not to go into my garden.
Don't be coy with me.
He snapped.
Don't beguile me with your words. I know what I saw in the garden. What are you hiding back there? Whatever it is, it's not natural. The villagers warned me. You are too bright and snappy. There's something odd and enchanting about you.
He pointed a shaking finger at my face as his face sneered.
You with your strange eyes and odd plants and herbs and potions.
Sometimes you say things you don't understand. I'm sure it's nothing.
I cocked my head at him, amused by his anger. He was frightened of a snakeskin and a feather. It did not add up.
I know you're hiding something.
He tossed the snake skin at my feet where it curled into a ball. He leaped backward as if he'd been stung, his tone rising.
I heard voices and saw eyes watching me. Eyes like yours. There are strange beings in the garden, and the more I think about it, the more I fear what you are doing. Don't you know how the changers and monrages rose up? It started with something as simple and seemingly innocent as this. I think I've been blinded by love.
Changers? Monrages?
I shouted, waving my arms, anger surging through me like a wave. Suddenly, I had no remorse, and the threads of control slipped away from me.
I resent that. You claim to love me, and yet you go to my garden and you get frightened because you saw a creature from the forest most likely eating my herbs, and you go to such drastic measures to compare me to evil immortal beings. How dare you? Maybe you're the one who isn't trustworthy.
Hansel dropped the blue feather, and it swooped back and forth, drifting to the patched floor of the cottage. Crossing his hands over his wide chest, he frowned, his face growing stern.
Will you tell me the truth? Who are you? What have you done? I know what I saw. I went out there and I saw it shift and move. There were horns. Tell me.
I glared at him, fuming. I tapped one foot against the ground while fixing him with my wide eyes as I raised an eyebrow in defiance.
I know what I saw.
Hansel resulted to blubbering and repeating himself.
Are you the reason? Tell me. Things are disappearing. Crops, livestock. That child the other day? Tell me it's not true. Tell me you have nothing to do with this.
I have nothing to do with this.
I wanted to repeat the words to calm him down, but he'd stroked my anger. Instead, I opened my mouth and out flowed the words I swore I'd never tell another living soul. As soon as I finished, I wished I'd never spoken. His face turned white, and he stumbled away, reaching for the wall to hold up his trembling body.
Why have you never told me this before?
Because
I shot back.
I thought you might react like this, and I was right. I never should have told you.
You lied all this time? I thought we had something. I thought you loved me.
His face twisted with contempt, but it was his eyes, those deep chocolate brown eyes, that made me feel as if I'd ripped his heart out and boasted about it.
We do have something.
I waved my arms as I tried to prove my point.
I love you, which is why I didn't tell you. I knew you wouldn't understand.
Love was not the emotion I felt in that moment. There was something deeper, some reason I would not relent.
It isn't natural.
His eyes narrowed as he hissed at me, and for a moment he seemed like a venomous serpent ready to strike.
You aren't natural. This must be reported.
Who are you going to report me to?
I crossed my arms, rolling my eyes as I mocked him.
Who are you to decide what is natural and what isn't? You're with me, remember?
His hand came up, and for a moment I thought he would strike me. All the same, I stood unflinching.
You are wicked.
His face contorted. He held up his hands as he backed away, as if I were the snake who would strike him.
Hansel,
I dropped my tone, although I had no reason to apologize.
I thought we could talk about this like adults.
You thought wrong.
He pointed a shaking finger at me as his back crashed into the door frame. His fingers fumbled for the door as he shook his dark head, his eyes glaring over in shame, fear, and perhaps heartbreak.
I should have known. Someone as bright and snappy like you is too good to be true. I should have seen the signs, but I didn't want to.
Where are you going?
I shouted as he slid out the front door.
We have to talk about this.
I need time. I need to think.
He shouted back and slammed the door.
Ooh.
Nice.
Very dramatic. Yeah, that's the opening scene.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it is.
Wow.
Oh, damn.
It's like a soap opera.
We don't even know what kind of a monster she is.
I'm really excited.
You know, arguments are really hard to write.
Are you kidding? Arguments are the best.
You know, I have trouble with it because I'm such a nice guy in real life. So I'm just like, what do people say when they argue? You know, but I think I get by. But yeah, I think this argument was really well written. So it was cool. For me, like I love how you just extended this argument and really fleshed it out. For me, my flaw would be like making it too short, you know? And I love like it was yours long and awesome. Did that make sense?
Yeah. I rewrote it like 4 times because it was really short originally.
Was it? Okay.
Then I decided to give it a whole chapter and just really like flesh it out a little bit.
Well
Just to
done.
make it mysterious.
Mm-hmm.
Let her rip.
Yeah. I liked it. So Angela, where can people find you?
Well, you can find me online at the4worldsseries.com. Or if that's too long, you can go to angelaj4.com/books, and there I am. I'm also on Instagram and Twitter. My handle is A421, and I've been a little lazy with my social media updates as of late, but I'm around.
I barely use any social media, just like to talk to Andy and other authors, and that's it.
Yep.
I'm really bad with it.
I've been so focused on the writing part. I'm like, oh, I just want to write. And so it's kind of fallen by the wayside.
Yeah. Andy and I were talking about that before the podcast, and I think I'm going to try and tack on some more words. And he gave me some really good advice on how to do that. So I'm going to try and implement that pretty soon. Just my schedule's all messed up, so I got to work on that first. But Angela, it's been great having you on the air again. We hope to have you again. So a really fun topic. I know Andy was all excited.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It was a fun one. I like talking antagonists always. I get by with the protagonists, but I love the antagonists.
And I'm a protagonist kind of guy.
Stevie, you're my protagonist.
Ooh. He's so romantic, Angela. He makes me blush. That's why I don't wear blush in the morning, because I know Andy's just gonna do that for me.
Oh God.
That was pretty good. Hey, don't steal that. I'm writing that today. That's gonna be part of my chapter today. So and next Tuesday we have another podcast, because the podcast we did last Thursday messed up and YouTube or Google Hangouts didn't record it. So we will be back on the air Tuesday, same time, and then again on Thursday. And
on
Tuesday,
Wednesday.
Is it Wednesday?
Yeah, next Wednesday is going to be our episode, because Thursday is a day where I'm forbidden to do anything that is not spoiling my wife.
Oh, what day is that? Is that her birthday, or?
It's the day she arrives here in Canada. We've been that'll be 7 weeks that I've been here in Canada alone.
Woo!
Oh
That is crazy.
How did you survive?
Yeah.
I worked a lot. I mean, that's how else do you think I got all those words in?
Okay,
Yeah.
true.
So you think it'll slow down when the wife shows up?
Definitely, because I worked 2 Saturdays, and she doesn't like me working Saturdays so much. So
Yeah.
I may be able to get like 4,000 words in on Saturday, not a full 15,000 word day.
Oh, God.
Wow.
That's
Not
awesome.
a full 50.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, that's a full day for me. Like at the end of the day, my brain is like mush.
Oh, I bet it is. Yeah. And Tuesday and Wednesday we're on, right?
Yep, Tuesday
Okay.
and Wednesday.
Cool. Anything else we want to add, guys? All right, Angela, thank you so much for being on the Fantasy Fiends podcast. Listeners, viewers, you can find her on Amazon.com as well by searching Angela J. Ford. It's Angela J. Ford, right? Yeah, Angela J. Ford. You can do Angela Ford. That also worked for me. It pulls her right up, and you will see an awesome cover of the 5 Warriors. And yeah, definitely give that a listen. You saw a sample of her work today, so I know you're going to be hungry for that. Guys, thank you so much for viewing and listening. Please hit that subscribe button. Please hit that like button. That helps us out so much. We love you, and we hope you have an amazing night. We'll see you next Tuesday.
Bye.